I'm Karen Swy-zick, and you're listening to the Bacon Bits and Bytes podcast. This is the podcast where a bit of business and a bite of technology come together. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Bacon Bits and Bytes podcast. And today with me, I have Sarah Killins. Sarah is an adventurer turned entrepreneur. She has traveled to over 30 countries before turning 22. Using her skills she learned working on Shopify support teams, she now leads her own communications company, specializing in marketing strategy and e-commerce migrations as a Shopify partner. Beyond that, she co-founded shophamont.com, an online collective of brands, makers, artists, and artisans marketing their products together to reach a larger audience. To cap it all off, she also teaches workshops and coaches business owners on e-commerce and entrepreneurial excellence. She's passionate about empowering young leaders and is an advocate for accelerating the success of women in tech. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Karen.
Oh, thanks for being on. So just before we get into your background, I wanted to talk about traveling because I enjoy traveling myself. I can't beat your record. I've only been to 19 countries. But I'm curious to know, did you also live and work in some of those countries as well?
Yeah, I did. So basically, when I graduated high school, I knew I wanted to do something in international business. I couldn't decide which university program I wanted to go to, so I took a gap year and I moved to Alberta and got a job working at the Chateau Lake Louise. And the idea was just to snowboard for a year, and that and that idea accelerated into leading me into a career in sales and marketing. But it also enabled me to travel to some amazing destinations, stay at some really cool hotels because I was working for Fairmont at the time. And I was obviously I was very fortunate to be making a higher level of income than I normally would be if I was working at 19 in Ontario. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I didn't really see hospitality as my be-all end-all for a career. So I thought a natural growth progression would be to try real estate sales. And I had a friend who was from London, England, and another friend who was a property recruiter in London, England. So we were FaceTiming all the time and talking about their life in London. And they said, well, why don't you come here and try real estate in London? So I got a working holiday visa and I moved to England for a year and was able to travel around Europe. And then once I left Europe, I went to New Zealand for a bit and then finished off in Fiji and came back home and then started working for Shopify and started doing all these wonderful things.
Oh my gosh, I am so jealous. New Zealand is on my bucket list.
It's such a beautiful country and the people there are amazing as well. And I got to see the set of The Shire for Lord of the Rings and that was just bucket list item to the max. So yeah, that was a once in a lifetime trip.
So out of all the 30 countries, do you have a favorite or a couple of favorites?
Ooh, I'd have to say Indonesia. Bali has to be one of my top destinations. Just the vibe, the energy, the people, the beaches, the sunsets, the nature. It's a pretty magical destination. And Italy as well. The food and the people just can't be beat. And Costa Rica, I think, as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've gone to Costa Rica a couple times and I've really enjoyed it. I've done surfing, but it's funny, I've only gone surfing twice in my life, once in Costa Rica and the other time in Tofino, but the trips were several years apart, so I felt like every time I tried surfing, I was just starting all over again. I think it's one of those things where you need to do it on a consistent basis to see actual progress.
Definitely. Well, I commend you just for being brave enough. I have this irrational fear of sharks that I've sat on the beach and watched my friends surf and be like, did you guys see any sharks out there? So good for you for even getting in the water.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm curious to know, what inspired you to start your communications company, Case Communications?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I left Shopify, like quite sadly, just because my dog passed away and it was very hard to work from home when you're kind of missing your little best friend. So I was like, okay, I need to take a break from this and kind of get myself more immersed in the community, just for my own kind of personal development. And then I think I joined a Facebook group that was for fempreneurs, and there was a bunch of business owners who were asking questions about selling online. And I was just like, hey, I can answer these questions. And then I started meeting with some of them and kind of going through their sites with them. And it turned out that the knowledge that I was giving them, they found very valuable. And it wasn't long until a friend of mine asked me to help him redo his site. And it kind of naturally grew into a business before I even knew it. And I had so much stuff to do that I was like, well, I can't get a full-time job because I've got a queue of this stuff to do. So I just need to listen to my market and turn this into a business and help these people as effectively as I can.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel like as a kid, like growing up, did you ever picture yourself as somebody who would be running their own business?
Yes, yeah, I've definitely always had a passion for entrepreneurship, and all of the roles that I've held within companies have been like I've had really amazing opportunities and mentors within companies, and worked for some of the top companies in Canada, and I've always kind of had that itch, like it's always at a 6-month point that I'll be like, okay, I've learned everything I can learn. Can I either move to the next position, or what else can I apply myself to in this role? And I've always had the goal that I wanted to be my own boss, but I've kind of, I think, fumbled with what I'm truly passionate and what I'm truly good at. And I think that's what I love about entrepreneurship is once you take that leap, every day you get to explore that and you get to explore your ideas. And as long as you're moving and you're working on it, like knock on wood, but most of the time things go okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny because growing up, for me personally, I never thought I would become one. I thought I'd be that person who worked the 25, 30-year job, but I found myself in my adult life, I was going from job to job, getting quite bored quite quickly, and without even realizing, like looking back in hindsight now, and like, no, I think that's, kind of the signs that you need to do your own thing. And yeah, being an entrepreneur, it's awesome. Well, there's, some days you're be like, oh my gosh, this is like crazy, as they say, like the roller coaster. But then at the same time too, there'll be days like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like I'm doing all these incredible things and, working with incredible people. But yeah, it's just interesting to hear people's stories when they say that, yeah, I always knew, I had this entrepreneurial mindset growing up. I'm just like, I didn't even have a lemonade stand.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I was a hustler since like I was up and down my street raking leaves for $5 and then taking all the leaves back to our trampoline. It was more fun to jump on the trampoline if you were getting hit in the face by leaves for some reason. I don't know.
For you. So sticking with the topic of your communications company, prior to the recording of this episode, literally just 10 minutes ago, we were talking about one of your big goals, and I'd love for you to share it with the audience.
Oh, thank you. Big goal would be for Case Communications to be able to go partner with charities and go into third world countries to work directly with artisans to help get them online, and show them how to sell their beautiful handmade products online. I've been fortunate that in my travels, I've been able to see and experience some very different cultures and very different lifestyles. And it's always been on my mind of how I can be most impactful and help these people. And I do really think it is empowering them through entrepreneurship and giving them entrepreneurial tools to succeed, but also being realistic that this needs to be done at the ground level. Like, this is going into community organizations and giving them funding for very basic things like computers and tools, just to get them on basic online platforms, and start to give them some of the tools that they need to succeed and help their families.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting in that, I guess, being fortunate to live in North America, having a computer and an internet, like, these are things I think sometimes we take for granted because we're just so used to, like, oh, my laptop broke, I need to get it fixed, or I need to get a new one. And I don't know about you, but I actually, I sometimes lose it when the internet is really slow, or I lose connection because, again, also, like, having an online business and being so immersed in the online world, it becomes a part of you. So just trying to think of, those countries and those cultures who don't have access to that. And that can open up such a huge world of possibilities for their artisan business.
Mm-hmm. And even giving them the tools to learn the things that they need to learn to sell better in person as well, and to develop their business in person, giving them access to online education and online tools to develop their in-person businesses, I think can be really powerful as well.
Mm-hmm. So we know that, like, pretty much e-commerce is like, everyone does online shopping, so it's such just like a huge trend. So I'm curious to know, given your background being in Shopify, like, what are some e-commerce, I guess, mistakes that people make, and then also the other side, like, what are some e-commerce best practices to live by?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think most common mistakes I see are people trying to spread themselves too thin. When they're kind of launching something new, there is this saying that you do have to be everywhere. And I think you just need to find where your market is and be focused on those channels. When people don't know where their market is and are just trying to blast their things on any social media channel that they can figure out how to use,
Mm-hmm.
It's a kind of a frustrating path to watch. I think another big one that I see a lot of small businesses struggle with is quality photography online. It makes such a difference in terms of sales conversions, and brand trust as well, and building a brand relationship and getting that quality behind your products.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with handmade and artisanal goods, there's some things that are so high quality in person, so beautiful, and then are like an iPhone picture or something, like an old iPhone picture online, and the quality is just not transferring.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of some best practices that I recommend to the site builds that I do are to be intentional and descriptive with your copy, and to use like consistent tone and really pay attention to the details, to not launch with like a huge catalog,
Mm-hmm.
but to launch with like quality over quantity when you do start out, to focus on the brand relationship that you're building and the kind of sales touches that you're having with your customers when they are visiting your site. So that's how are you interacting and engaging with a visitor once you do have them on your site. And that's through like brand loyalty programs, different like apps and plugins that are available for stores, and different like community strategies that they're doing to engage their customers on their online store, but also like getting that generation to get it to their online store. And that's kind of what I get into with Case, why we do marketing strategy and e-commerce. I would say when I did start out, I was doing kind of just website launches, and then you see that to be successful, you do need to have one or two other channels that are bringing traffic into your site and helping you build a community.
Yeah, community is definitely important. And also the fact that you mentioned about, having high quality photos, because I find myself when I'm going to people's websites and looking at their online stores, if I can't really see the product, or like the photo is too small or too blurry, it's kind of like a turn off. Like it doesn't make me want to go back to their
Mhm.
store. And then also, yeah, definitely quality over quantity, because I think, and you could probably add on to this, if you're launching and like the consumer doesn't know about you yet, or doesn't know about their brand, I think like having too much may overwhelm them to be like, there's so much, and it may take forever like to go through the store realizing like, oh, they have 10-20 pages of products.
Yes, and definitely and product organization as well. And that's something that I think Shopify does really well and is very intuitive once you kind of know how to organize your products. But organizing your products for like optimal user experience is very important. Like user experience in general, I think it's always before you launch a site, like you should be taking your site around to 5 to 10 different people and just watching how they're like interacting with it, and what you can be doing better to make it more simple, because that's the biggest conversion killer is just confusion online.
Do you have any predictions for the future of e-commerce? Are there any trends that you see creeping up in the near future?
I think consumers want like multifaceted channel approaches. So I think like the coolest things that I'm seeing that are getting the most engagement are when it's forcing a consumer to interact with your brand on multiple channels at the same time. So that's something like having a pop-up location, but they can only experience the products. They actually need to go online to buy it, and then it gets shipped to their house.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think in person is dying at all. It's just turning into more experiential. And I think like we're seeing that within like up and coming VR shopping. That's going to take it to a new experience as well. That I'm very excited for, and I'm trying our best to be as educated in that space as possible so we can continue to help our clients.
Yeah, the idea of VR shopping sounds really cool, especially when it comes to online shopping for clothes, right? Because that's always the biggest thing. Like you don't know how it's gonna look or fit on you, and more often than not, we're like returning or exchanging just because, again, yeah, it doesn't fit, or it looks completely different. So yeah, since let's touch base more on your shop ham on site. What was the idea behind that?
Yeah, so the Shop Ham site was really responding to the needs of like small brands and artisans that I work with every day. I definitely see this like niche market where they're doing really well at in-person markets. They're doing really well at like in-person brick and mortar locations that kind of have this same model of multi-vendors that are making handmade products and sustainable products. But I wasn't seeing anybody who was like successfully bringing this model online.
Mm.
And there's definitely a consumer base for it. Like if you look at these trade shows that are all kind of craft markets of handmade products, they're always busy. Shoppers love them, and shoppers are willing to pay a lot of money for high quality handmade products. But I work with these business owners, so I know their unique struggles of getting their stuff online. And it is like when you're a one person maker, like we know from running businesses, there's lots more to running a business than just doing your service.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so these makers, they kind of get overwhelmed, and it's very easy to as a small business owner, especially when there's a demand for your product and a very high demand. So it's just trying to enable them to give them another sales channel that's very easy for them to use, and it operates on a drop shipping basis. So we're basically a collective that we market and sell their products for them. And when we get an order through Shop Hamot, we send them the order, and the maker ships it directly to the customer.
Awesome. I'm just still blown away by like all these amazing things that you've done at such a young age. Basically what I wish I had done when I was in my 20s or explored. So given that you are, of the Generation Z, do you think there is like a certain bias towards you guys?
Um, yes, unfortunately. I think it's all just as like people are getting to understand the new generation. I think we kind of get like a bit of the millennial slack about we're not willing to work hard or do the grunt work and things like that. But I just think like we're very tech savvy. We're hardworking, but we need to see like a passion and a purpose behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once that passion and purpose is tapped into, like I've seen my peers and coworkers do really, really amazing things. And I think that there's a lot of potential in the talent that I see around myself and in the entrepreneurial community and in the ecosystem right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. Like I guess I can say like I'm an old millennial. And it is true. The generations before us, they tend to think, we're entitled or we don't work hard. But I would kind of argue in saying that we do work hard, or we've worked hard to try and, design a flexible life that we want, or we've worked hard to, focus on discovering our passion, working on our passion and monetizing our passion. Or then we've also worked hard to learn about the technology and how can we build things to help us, like save time and make our life easier. So I guess maybe like the traditional idea of like working hard is like, just slaving away or like being in person at the office. Whereas the sense, like, I guess our definition of working hard is different, or what we've produced from working hard is different from what I guess people from previous generations have expected.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely have that conversation with my grandparents, my parents all the time of like that old adage of like that you should just stick with it and stick it out. And like everyone
Yes.
has to take like some crap sometimes, and if you're getting disrespected, you should just swallow it, and
Yep.
hierarchy and authority, and you have to do it. And I think that it just comes from a perspective of different times too. Like when I have like really great deep conversations with my grandparents, like my grandmothers just didn't have the options that I did and the opportunities, and that's a gift as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we work hard in a very different way, and we also have to be very emotionally intelligent and self-aware in a very different way because of like the level of distractions and options and opportunities that are available to us.
Mm-hmm. It's like shiny object syndrome. Just play something and you're like, oh, I like this. I like this.
Exactly. Like, what do you do when you truly can do anything?
Yeah. And just kind of going back to what you're saying about how, our parents and our grandparents have told us just to stick it out. And I just think back to my own personal experience when I was building my career some time ago. If I had stuck to those jobs that were making me unhappy, like, I don't think I would have been in this position where I am today. I felt like I probably would have been even more miserable and think I would have like wasted my time instead of saying like, you know what, I have the power to choose. Like I'm decided like I'm gonna try and search for something better, even though it's gonna be difficult and it's gonna be like stressful and time consuming. But I think at the end of the day, it'll be worth it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I always like the term the golden handcuffs.
Oh
Because
yes. I've used that term actually too before.
that is what it feels like when you're working like a cushy corporate or government job. You're like, it's good, but you know that you're just gonna feel stuck. And well, that's how I felt, at least. I was like, this is a path that I don't foresee for myself, and the quicker I change directions and work hard on what I do want, the more successful that I'll be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all about I think taking risk and moving forward. So speaking of that, like given that you're a young entrepreneur, what advice would you give to people who want to take the leap, who are around the same age as you, who want to follow in your footsteps?
I'd say just do it. Like,
Like Nikki.
yes. I'd say keep your overhead low, like keep your expenses as low as you can. Be realistic about your lifestyle. And then that's something definitely I've had to curb. Like I went from traveling like 4 to 6 times a year internationally to traveling 1 to 2 times a year just within Canada. And look at every single expense in your life from a lens of like, do I need it, or is this something that like I just want and I think I'm used to? And network your little butt off and tell people your ideas and work with people that you feel good around.
That's a lot of great advice. Yeah, with respect to cutting expenses, I've cut significantly, like my expenses by a huge amount. And at first I thought like, oh my gosh, how can I do this? But I think also at the same time, people would be surprised as to what they can live without and realize, oh, okay, I didn't really need that, or like I'm surviving and even like thriving without it. I think at the end of the day, when you're really focused and dedicated to like your goals and working closer towards your purpose, then all the other things are like you could do without.
Definitely. Definitely. And I think there's a lot of things that I've realized just in the different lifestyles that I've seen. There's a lot of things in our culture and in North America that we just think like are given, that we need and that we've always had. And then once you see people without it, you're like, oh, maybe I can just change the way I live a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So if people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, on Instagram would be the best and easiest, at Sarah Killins or at Cased Comms or at Shop Hamont. And I also have websites, casedcommunication.com or shophamont.com, or on LinkedIn or Medium as well.
So basically everywhere.
Yeah.
But that's good. That's good.
Just Google me. You'll find it.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny because sometimes I get annoyed when I Google people and then I can't find them. I'm like, where are you?
Oh, yeah. I just want to write. I'm like, my company can help with this.
Well, thanks again for being on the show today. It was really great chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Karen. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode, and stay tuned for more episodes in the near future. Ciao for now. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Bacon Bits and Bytes podcast. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe, leave a review on iTunes, and share this podcast with your family and friends. You can follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Bacon Bits and Bytes. And on Twitter, it's baconbits_bytes. Ciao for now.